Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Roofr Report, brought to you by Roofr.com. Hey everybody, welcome to the Roofr Report. I'm Pete McKendrick, your host. And today we have a great topic. We're going to talk about the myths and the facts of the insurance industry. A great guest with us today to cover this topic, Dan Tighe. A very interesting angle, I think, on it. You know, so many times we're talking to, insurance companies or roofers that are doing insurance work. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a chance here, Dan, to introduce yourself and what you guys do, and give us a little bit of background of how you got to where you are today. And, and then we'll dive into some of the topics here about, insurance work and what these contractors need to look out for and how you're working with homeowners today. So,
Yeah, terrific. It'll be a fun conversation. So I've been doing insurance dispute litigation here in the state of Florida and also in New York for the better part of 10 years. Thousands of claims, hundreds of millions recovered. So definitely hoping to provide some value to people operating specifically in this market, and then hopefully, some education to people who are joining us in other markets, not Florida, New York. And just very quickly to that point, we're going to have a nice, entertaining discussion. Obviously, I can't give specific legal advice to people without knowing fact patterns, et cetera, et cetera. So this is just going to be a nice educational conversation today. I kind of have to put my lawyerly disclosure out there.
absolutely.
But certainly looking forward to it.
Yeah. So let's dive in a little bit and just talk about where you guys come into play in the process, right? I think that's a great place to start. I think so many times we have a lot of people that see the insurance market. They're like, hey, there's an opportunity here to make some good money. Let me get into insurance roofing. Let me start to tackle some of these storm jobs, and at what point does a company like yours really become necessary or really come into play for these contractors?
Sure, that is a great starting point. So the first thing to realize is that the laws are different in every state. And, so if you're in roofing contracting or general contracting, any restoration business, you're probably going to want to seek out someone sooner, hopefully before you need them, someone and create that relationship and understand what the laws are, what the rules are that regulate, how you work with homeowners, how you work with insurance companies. That's the first thing I would advise clearly, is to make sure that you're not running afoul of any laws or licensing rules or whatever it may be. But I absolutely love that as a starting point, Pete. So generally speaking, and traditionally, you don't need a lawyer until you're in an insurance dispute. A lot of times you can handle these, even somewhat disputed claims, you can handle them amicably. And in most markets in the country, you're allowed to deal with the insurance company, whether it's in a negotiating style interaction. In certain states, that's outlawed and that's against the law. It's actually a felony here in Florida. But in other states, my understanding is that you are allowed to advocate on behalf of yourself or on behalf of your client, the homeowner or property owner. So in that sort of market, traditionally, you wouldn't need to hire a lawyer or any adjuster, really anybody, until you've exhausted your amicable remedies. So until you've talked about rectifying disparate scopes, until you've talked about, what the requirements are to put a property in pre-loss conditions. So that's the traditional way. Speaking specifically to the Florida market, following Hurricane Irma is really when we saw the shift, where it went from insurance companies dealing amicably with contractors to them really putting their foot down and saying, hey, we're not even talking to any contractors. When that market shift happened, especially in the higher dollar value claims, when that market shift happened, we would see contractors, advise their homeowners to get lawyers like us in a lot earlier in the process. And of course, my quick pitch to that is we're going to charge you the same either way. Might as well bring us in early.
Yeah. So I guess speak a little bit to, I think that one of the businesses that's really kind of exploded on the insurance side of roofing is the supplementing companies, right? You have these companies that are like, hey, guys just go out, quote it, give it to us. We'll deal with all the negotiation part of it. We'll get you as much as we possibly can.
Yeah.
So where does that distinction come between, hey, I'm using a supplement company and hey, I need someone like yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it would go to really what services are being provided. And, the worst part about interviewing a lawyer is the answer to every question is it depends. That's a tale as old as time. And certainly I don't mean to give you those type of answers. However, this is really going to be a state by state issue. In
Sure.
some states, again, my understanding, I don't practice there, is that it's perfectly legal for you to hire a third party supplementing company for them to draw up estimates, for them to actually negotiate insurance claims, perfectly legal. Here in Florida, that is a felony for anyone who's not holding a public adjuster or an attorney in the state to assist in any way on an insurance claim, which is a way broad definition, which can be scary. I want to make it clear that I don't support that. I don't think that that's reasonable, and I think it would make more sense for the homeowners, for contractors, to have more clarity on what they are allowed to do and are not allowed to do. But of course, as a lawyer, I do, we deal with the laws the way that we encounter them. And I'm always certainly supporting good contractors and homeowners to, not run into these walls where they have to hire a lawyer for an everyday, insurance claim. It should not all be disputed. So back to the supplementing companies, if you're hiring someone, for example, to write up a scope, maybe with Xactimate or, helping you with something like that, here in Florida, that would be perfectly legal. You can provide an estimate any way you want. You could have someone come out, even meeting with an adjuster at the request of a homeowner, as long as you're not, you know, walking past certain boundaries in your communications, should be perfectly acceptable. But the law is very clear here in Florida. And I know this is not a Florida specific discussion, so I don't want to hit you with the it depends. However, I do know, here in Florida, that would not be a legal approach, to hire a supplementing company and have them negotiate an insurance claim. That would be a role of maybe a public adjuster or an attorney, of course.
Yeah, that's great insight because I think like those companies have really kind of staked a claim in the insurance industry. They're very common now. A lot of folks, I think, are using them, especially smaller contractors. Which is, at Roofr, we deal with a lot of smaller contractors, and I think that that's the guys that are most likely going to use a supplementing company because they don't have the ability to do it in house. So, I mean, that's great insight of the differences and the use of that company. So, and I think it's, not that it's a Florida specific conversation, but I think it is good to focus on Florida because what you and I talked about at the beginning of this is, Florida has probably the most stringent rules, right? And if I always tell contractors, if you can do it in Florida, you can do it anywhere, right? Like if you can make it work in Florida, you can make it work pretty much in any of the other states, right? So, so I think it is great insight to kind of go off of Florida and what is happening there, and
Sure.
because eventually it could end up being similar,
Yeah.
in the other states if they follow suit.
Yeah. Pete, we have seen that, laws or rules will develop in one jurisdiction. And then as the insurance companies and their powerful lobbyists find out that they're advantageous to their positions, they'll actually move those over to other jurisdictions. So, absolutely, I'm going to let you kind of drive the conversation. I'm going to provide whatever I can Florida wise, and then people can apply that differently. But to that point as well, what you said about Roofr, who I love, I have a long history with the team at Roofr. I mean, great guys, and just always, roofer first, right? Contractor client first. So I just love that approach. So, my hat's off to Richie, Nick, and the whole team, Kevin, the team over there, of course, and you, who I'm having the opportunity to spend some time with. But Roofer is geared maybe towards that, independent, smaller roofing company. And my first and off the bat advice to that smaller company is if you want to get involved in insurance restoration work, it's a terrific market. You've got people who need your help, and that's true nationwide. Not even storm chasing, but just in your local markets, you're going to come across people who do need your help. What I would first advise those people to do is find someone who's local in their jurisdiction, find a lawyer if you can, and just ask them for a conversation. Hey, can you walk me through what my rules are here? Find that box you need to play in, and then build out your processes and your systems within that safe box.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think that so many times in this industry, we look at insurance roofers as being these huge companies, right? They're covered, they're chasing storms, they're all over the place. tons of people, and it's not impossible to be the little guy and be an insurance contractor. Like you said, start locally. A lot of these places, you've got storms happening in your own backyard. You don't have to go to Colorado or Texas
Yep.
to find a storm, especially where you guys are at. Hurricane season comes around and there could be work for years based off of that. I went to IRE earlier this year, and flying in, the amount of blue tarps on roofs was mind blowing to me. I mean, how many residences were still, waiting probably on insurance claims to be filed, or, something like this to take place to get them to where they could actually get that roof replaced.
Yeah, and that's good advice. Is diamonds at your feet. There's actually an old book or parable about that. You can go across the world looking for diamonds, or you can just look down and get to work and find the diamonds at your feet. That's always my advice to people in any line of business: is bloom where you're planted. If you want to get in restoration work, network with insurance agents. There are people, even if you don't help in that claims process, even if you're just getting started and you're just learning, they need, at the end, they're going to get some amount of money from that insurance company, and just kind of get your foot in the door and kind of, start learning a little bit. But, for me, I always tell people, invest in the learning first, make sure you're doing it right. You're doing a real disservice to people just jumping in and saying, strapping insurance on a magnet and throwing it on your truck. You might be, creating liability for yourself. You might be biting off more than you can chew. Is figure it out. You're not going to learn everything prior, but make sure that you understand, again, the box you're allowed to play in, and think of some smart systems and some ways that you can help. And that may involve, especially when you're getting started, outsourcing certainly the claims process. That's going to be some of the more complex part of running restoration. Of course, the roofing part, if you're a roofer, you should have that down pretty good. So the claims part's going to be the more difficult part, and the marketing part and that sort of stuff is, you can outsource that until you're comfortable that you can bring that in-house, or that you can really do that in an educated, smart way and design your systems and processes for that. But in the meantime, if you're in one of the states where it's legal to use a supplementing company, that would be a great way to kind of get out there. And I do know some great guys who run supplementing companies, and we don't happen to use them. It's just a different line of work. We don't need it. Um, but I've met them and I've heard guys who've had great results with them, and that's really a great way to kind of get your foot in the door. Don't say, "Hey, I'm now the world's largest insurance restoration contractor," when you don't know what you're doing. Just work locally. Take a few jobs in, work diligently on them, communicate with those homeowners, and learn it by doing it that way. But do it in your protected space, your protected box, where you're not getting yourself in trouble.
That's great. And I think so you've been working with a lot of contractors, and what do you find to be, and it kind of plays right into what you're talking about here, is what do you find to be the most common mistakes that are made when someone says, okay, I'm getting into insurance roofing? Maybe they're, and they could be brand new to roofing altogether, but a lot of times they're guys who are experienced roofers, maybe have been doing residential retail work for years and just want to branch out or scale a little bit. So they decide they're going to go into insurance roofing. And what are some of the pitfalls you find, like some of the mistakes that they make up front?
Yeah, I mean, just tagging on to the conversation we just had, is really coming in and just saying, I'm going to go for it, and not being prepared. And the problem is, it's not like adding siding to your roofing business. The reason is now you're talking about a claim with an adversarial party. So this is someone who, when they pay you a claim dollar, they're losing a claim dollar for their stakeholders, and they're designed to defend, these claims, really. So if you're doing things wrong, it's not occurring in a black box where if you install the siding wrong, you can come out and fix it. This is something where you may have some real consequences. So again, that would be the first pitfall I see, would be just jumping in and saying, hey, I can do it all, I'll just figure it out, which may work. And especially one of the things that I've loved about working with roofing contractors is that inventive spirit, is like, hey, here's the opportunity, here's what I got, let's go figure it out. I'll jump in and I'll jump out of the plane and build a parachute while I'm landing. That's something that's very admirable, and that I actually, has helped my law practice a lot, is dealing with contractors who have this go-getter spirit and this, hey, we'll figure it out, whatever. And that's made me unique as a lawyer. That's very the opposite of what most lawyers are. So I've actually learned a ton from my colleagues in roofing. But that would be the first pitfall, would be trying to do it all or not learning the laws. You can cause some real liability. There's guys in Florida being, RICO suits going against contractors in Florida. And these are people that the insurance company said, you're actually running a criminal enterprise. And they're facing serious jail time, incredible financial penalties. And, for me, I would not be able to sleep at night in that situation. And, I think guys get ahead of themselves. They get out over their skis and they just say, hey, I can do it all. I'll figure it out, whatever. And they don't realize that there's actually someone on the opposite end of that claim who's watching their every move.
Yeah, that's good advice. Let's talk about obviously probably the most prominent tool is Xactimate, right? What are the benefits of using Xactimate? And I think there's a movement now to kind of go maybe not away from Xactimate, but just some other options.
Yeah.
Speak to Xactimate, your experience with Xactimate a little bit, and what your thoughts are about the product. And I think honestly, from what I've experienced in this industry, is that I think it's a great starting point. Like you said, if someone's coming in and you don't necessarily know the industry well, Xactimate, can definitely help you along the way, right? Like it's definitely, and it's such a prominent tool, so I guess speak a little bit to like your experience with it and what your thoughts are about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'll go a little bit to the nature of where I'm at in the process versus where a contractor's at. Again,
Sure.
every single claim in my office is considered a disputed claim. We don't have any, super lovey-dovey, hey, we send an estimate and we get the money back. In Florida, it's just risen to that adversarial level. Even homeowners call our office, we put it together and we let them know, some proportion of our claims will resolve very quickly within, 2-3 months. But a lot of them, they're going to really look at it adversarial, and they're going to draw it out and delay it out. So it's a little different, my position, from a general, person, a general roofing contractor helping a homeowner out. Generally speaking, again, I don't want to hit you too many, it depends, but generally speaking, your insurance policy, every insurance policy I've read, none of them have had a requirement that you have to provide an estimate with Xactimate. You just don't. You can use lipstick on a napkin, and that can be your estimate, legally binding as a contract if that's your intention. There's rules state by state to what a contract is. But listen, that's your bid, that's your estimate. It's exactly that, an estimate. That'd be unprofessional, but if that's how you come up with your estimates, you could use that. And then as we move more towards itemization, Roofr's got a great product too with a nice itemized estimate that is absolutely acceptable to use in your insurance situation. And the same thing if you have any other number of estimating tools. If you provide homeowners estimates using that tool, generally speaking, there's no reason you could not apply that to an insurance restoration job. Let me now get into what I see as the positive side of Xactimate. Generally speaking, you're dealing with an insurance adjuster. If you're a roofing contract, probably at the field adjuster, desk adjuster level. That is a person who has a stack. I know my brother used to run the claims department for State Farm Auto in New York, for all of New York. So we know where the bodies are buried. We know how to do things. Maybe other people haven't privy to that experience. But they have a stack of claims. Let me make sure my hands on the picture. This high on their desk. So, the rhetorical question I would ask a roofer is, do you think that overworked, underpaid insurance adjuster who gets called a jerk every day, you think they're more likely to take the easy Xactimate that they understand how to read and put it together and either pay a portion of it, or deny it? Or do you think they're going to take the time to grab your, handwritten estimate the way you do it, and then they're going to understand what each of your line item means, even though it's not consistent language with what they've been trained? And then they're going to say, let me pay way more attention to this one. Let me figure out what that contractor is truly trying to communicate to me. And let me dive in and let me give it the due care that it probably deserves. And, it might take me 45 minutes to read it, but I'm happy to do it. That to me seems extremely unlikely. So what we talk about a lot at our firm is square peg, square hole, right? If we can prevent reasons for dispute or reasons for delay, generally speaking, we're going to try to do that. I know that lump sum estimating has been kind of on the forefront in some of these discussion groups. There's no reason you cannot do that legally. You're allowed to do it. By the contract, you're allowed to do it. But in my experience, insurance companies would like to see it as itemized as possible. And listen, they may be setting it because they want to dispute it. Doesn't change the fact that they're not going to dispute your lump sum estimate either. Um, but to that point, kind of another important disclaimer I want to kind of put out there, and I know my colleague John Hoteling down in New Orleans has been big on this. Is your estimate is exactly that. It's an estimate. Include in that estimate language that it's for a time certain period. We know certainly right now with supply chain constraints, the COVID issues, all of that, inflation, material prices are changing. In as much as you can, you want that estimate to protect you as the contractor. And it's exactly that. It's an estimate. It's not a hard contract that the insurance company's signing off on and then they're sending the money in your building the next day. You're saying this is the reasonable, customary, legitimate job expenses that I will incur for this job, and it's subject to change if you pay me in 8 months. No problem with that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great point. I mean, I used to work for a CRM company prior to coming to Roofr, and we actually had the ability to set an expiration date when we sent a contract specifically for that reason. We would have language built right into it that said, hey, this contract's only good for 30 days.
Yeah.
After that, if you haven't signed it, we have to revisit this because, like you said, there could be a number of factors that potentially have changed in that course of that time, especially nowadays with how volatile everything is.
Yeah, and Pete, to that point, in as much as if you're running both insurance and retail, at least, and I'll speak to Florida, which again is kind of on the forefront of, unfortunately, adversarial relationships between good contractors helping people and insurance companies. But in as much as you can run your processes the same way you run your retail processes, that's going to keep you out of trouble, right? Because you're legitimately getting paid to build a roof. You're not a claim salesman. You are not a unlicensed adjuster. Hey, listen, we delivered our estimate to the homeowner. The homeowner sent it to you. If you'd like to discuss with me how to rectify two disparate estimates, I'm happy to spend some time doing that with you. I'm not negotiating with you. That would be illegal. However, if we have some different ideas as to what is required to reconstruct this property the right way, we can have a conversation about that. Again, I'm not negotiating with you. And if they shut the door on you, they don't have to talk to you at all as a contractor in Florida. It would have to be that they've invited that conversation. And again, just, in as much as you can make it parallel to your retail operations, that's going to keep you out of trouble. What the insurance companies want in Florida is they want to deal with the homeowner or the homeowner's representative, and they want to work the claim out with that person. And then they want a roofer to come and give them a bid at the end, a retail bid at the end, for whatever amount that is. That's what the insurance companies envision in Florida. And the problem that some people fall into, the trap they fall into in Florida, is, they get too deep in that claims process. And although they had not been currently prosecuting it, it does appear that they're starting to enforce the laws against the people who are running, these unlicensed adjusting or claim sales organizations.
Yeah, I think that's a huge piece of advice. And it's funny because I have a good friend who's a roofer, and we've often had conversations about topics like this. And he said something to me a while ago, a couple of years ago, that really stuck with me. And that was every roof is a retail roof for the contractor, right? Exactly what you just said, and I think that that's a huge piece of advice. You should treat every job like it's a retail job, whether, because like you said, it's not you against, and I think so many times we have this approach as the contractor that it's us against the insurance company, and we're going to bat for we're going to bat for the customer, but it's us and the insurance company that are going to battle it out. That's not necessarily the case. Like you said, we should just be delivering our estimate just like any other job. And it's really the homeowner who's filing the claim. It's the homeowner who has the responsibility to work with the insurance company to figure all that out. Like you said, if you need to get involved a little bit to discuss why, or justify why, your estimate is what it is. That's one thing. But, I think that taking that approach is a much cleaner way. It keeps you out of trouble a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's good advice from your friend. Absolutely. If you're a roofing contractor, you're in the business of building roofs. If you're a public adjuster or a lawyer, you're in the business of advocating for homeowners who have disputed claims or presentation claims. And certainly there's a lot of money to be made overlapping. If you're a roofer in Florida, there's a lot of money to be made by selling claims, door to door or whatever. But if you don't do things the right way, you're creating tremendous liability for yourself and your company.
So take a little bit of a shift here. I want to talk about all the technology that's come into the roofing industry and how beneficial is it to use some of this technology to, when you give that estimate to that homeowner, have maybe some other information, maybe a measurement from a company like ours, maybe a historical hail map or something like that from one of those type of companies. All that stuff seems like it would be great to essentially back up what you're sending in, along with this estimate, so does that stuff help the situation? If I was to give that package to a homeowner and say, hey, when you send this in, here's some, supporting documents, how beneficial is that stuff?
It's one of the things that we just constantly hark on is documentation, document, paper those files, communicate well. I mean, that's just generally good business practice. And the suite of tools that we have available as contractors and attorneys today, when I was doing this 10 years ago, when I got started, I'd have to hire a meteorologist on each and every individual claim to prove damage. And then people were hand drawing, sketching, and estimating. It was an incredibly different business. And in as much as you can now, use services like Roofr, you can automate those processes, or just have that built into your system where you don't have someone full time drawing estimates. You simply pay, I don't know what, a couple bucks per shot, and you've got a beautiful professional presentation. That's dynamite, I mean, or your monthly, whatever it may be. I mean, that is absolutely dynamite. In as much, first of all, appearing professional, right, to your end consumer. You're going up against a couple other bids, but you've got all this professional documentation. The other thing that we're huge on is that communication and setting expectations. So if you have that beautiful documentation and again, bleeding over into the insurance stuff a little bit, if you explain to the homeowner, hey, this is not, other people may have knocked on your door and told you they're the best and they just pay me every time. Well, that's probably not true. The more professionalism, the more communication, the more you can set expectations. Like any relationship or any business transaction, you're going to have a smoother process. You're going to have a happier client, and you're going to sleep well at night. You're not going to get a midnight phone call from someone who was wildly, their expectations were wildly not met because you've set proper, realistic expectations. And certainly, like back to your specific question, having a professional package with your professional branding there, your license, all of that. Here's how I got to my numbers. So when you do talk to the insurance adjuster and when they say, I only owe you, we have big claims here in Florida typically, but we'll talk about a shingle roof somewhere, anywhere. Hey, we owe you $12,000 and we're not paying for, drip edge, whatever it might be. You can say, well, this professional contractor came over. Here it is, itemized. Why would I not need that? And it changes that discussion, and it changes it from insurance, big bad insurance, or excuse me, friendly insurance company, where Mrs. Smith says, "Oh, I play golf with the agent, and oh, they're so lovely," and you're the bad guy because you're telling him something that doesn't mesh. It changes it from, "Hey, listen, maybe that insurance company doesn't always have your best interest in mind."
Very good. Yeah. So, to kind of take a turn a little bit, like you said early on, I think even before we started this, that you're starting to work more and more because of the laws in Florida with the homeowner itself. So, let's talk about from a homeowner standpoint, how do I come to the table prepared, right? Like, let's say I've had a storm, I've got damage to my roof. What are some things that I want to know to protect myself as a homeowner, to make a smart decision on my roofer? To really streamline that process. What is my expectation? How long is that process going to take? Even, like you said, kind of setting that expectation ahead of time. What should I know as a homeowner?
Pete, I'm going to have to hit you with a big "it depends," of course.
Yeah, that is a big it
For
depends,
purposes
right?
of this discussion, I'm going to dive in the best I can. Generally speaking, when you hire my law firm, we're going to handle everything. And that's part of the value proposition is you could be, a little doe in the forest. It doesn't matter. You're handing it off to a talented team that has specific relevant experience, thousands of times going against these carriers in Florida. We're going to approach it amicably first, of course. We're not rattling our saber off the bat. Any lawyer who says that is an ineffective lawyer, frankly. That's one of the old, tricks for some of these, not as experienced lawyers. Oh, I'm so aggressive. Well, that's not actually getting claims resolved. It's really about relationships, and it's about professionalism and treating each other with respect. But back to the homeowner point. Um, what we want to do, and again, speaking to my law firm, is we want to set reasonable expectations that we can meet or exceed. Now, what happens is it's impossible to teach, and I mean this in the nicest way, to teach a non-lawyer everything that I've learned in my, I have other professional degrees. I have an MBA, went to law school for 3 years. I took the New York bar, the Florida bar. I've been doing this for 10 years. Even the most experienced, restoration roofing companies, they come into this and they say, oh, this is how most claims go. I know everything. It's just not the case. Unfortunately, people want to believe that it's like a vending machine. You put in $1, you get a Coke. That is not how this works at all. There are so many different factors that we can't even explain in some cases to people who don't have the same understanding, or it would just take weeks to educate to the point where you'd have an equal understanding. To that point, we want to set expectations that we can meet or exceed. And we're going to push those out to somewhere where we're comfortable. We're going to resolve 80% of the claims, at least by that time, because we want happy clients with expectations that are met. So that's how we run our business. And what I would suggest, likewise, to a roofing contractor. Now, if you're just getting involved in restoration, again, you may want to outsource that portion to that professional claims handler. Once you have enough experience to understand what your processes are, generally how long things take is the same thing like the estimate. I'm not going to tell you this is exactly everything. I'm not going to say, I'm going to have this done in 3.5 weeks. What I'm going to say is, generally speaking, we're resolving these claims between 2 months and 6 months, maybe 8 months. If the insurance companies are busy, we have trouble getting them to communicate. That being said, it might happen earlier, and I sure hope it does, but there's a significant chance that it may go outside of that, and we may need to bring in an additional professional to assist with this matter. They would represent you. I've got great partnerships. If it comes to that, I've got great people we can work with, but I'm going to give it a best shot here first. And generally speaking, we're able to hit these marks. But setting those proper expectations, obviously, maybe if you're selling door to door, people are incentivized to sell with bravado and gusto. Oh my gosh, we're the best. And oh, we're just knocking these out. Oh, you have security for, oh my God, they pay us every time. That may work to get ink on a page, but that is going to be a nightmare for you and that client, right? Because they don't know what to expect. They don't want to be upset at you. They want things to go well. And if you don't set expectations that you can realistically meet, then you're not going to see eye to eye, and you're going to have a dispute not just with the insurance carrier but also your client.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about, Nick and I do a webinar series for Roofr, and we talk often about the transparency piece of it, and being transparent with the customer and how far that goes, right? For your credibility, for just like the ease of the job, keeping them in the loop, making sure that they have, an education piece to it, and they understand the process, they understand what's going to happen, what the expectation is so crucial to having a smooth process, for you as the contractor and for the homeowner as well. Obviously the homeowner wants to know what's going on. I think so many times you deal with contractors that are, I know we've had experiences where, the customer doesn't even know when the contractor's coming to do the work. And that's on the retail side. That's not even on the insurance side, where there's all these other factors coming into play, so I think that's such a big piece of it, that you mentioned there, is like being upfront, setting a reasonable expectation that you can meet, right? Obviously things are going to happen. But I think that when those things happen, if you've set that reasonable expectation and you communicate with them, it's going to go a lot smoother than if you didn't. Right. So,
Pete, you're a wise man. That's just good life advice.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's from experience,
That'll help you at home. That'll help you with everything you do.
Exactly.
But another thing I'll tag on that was very well said. And, I wholeheartedly agree with you with all of that. The only other thing I'll just add on to that is the communication piece. The only time I see people upset when I'm working with a homeowner who also has a contractor involved. The only people who are truly upset, and granted, you're going to have a couple jerks, if you deal with enough people, but the only people who are upset is it's always driven by a lack of communication. And I haven't heard from anyone in 8 weeks, or I haven't heard in longer than that. And especially if people are, and I'm not for purpose of this conversation, but if you're working with assignments of benefit and you're taking over that person's insurance claim and they don't hear from you for 6 months, they're calling in Florida, the DBPR, and they're complaining to the state attorney general, hey, this guy took my stuff and I can't even get a hold of him. So, there's some good advice that I often share is your success is directly related to how many uncomfortable conversations you have, right? Or are willing to have. And sometimes you get up and you just eat the frog in the morning. That's the worst thing that'll happen all day is you call that irate homeowner. And, generally speaking, it's never as bad as you think it's going to be anyways. Just pick up the phone, call them, let them know why there's a delay, why there's a problem, why you haven't been able to meet whatever expectations that were set. And then the secret is if you want them to not only just stop being upset at you, call them again the next week or a couple days later and let them know the next step you took and let them know you're committed to better communication moving forward. One of the things that we learned early on at our law firm, and of course, here in Florida, when you have a hurricane, it's all hands on deck. We get a huge flood of claims in, which of course is not our normal everyday volume. So we have to scale up all of our departments. And obviously, again, it's not a vending machine. You put in $1, you get out a Coke, although people sometimes expect it to work that way. So one of the things that we did was we built in secondary communication systems. I've got a great tech team. We send out a monthly newsletter that says, click here for an update. Click here. Someone's going to reach out to you. That's in addition to their attorney talking to them. And that's in addition to a full-time client concierge that just has an inbound phone call. If you need to talk to someone at the law firm, obviously lawyers are busy. We're in depositions. We're at court. We're in trial, whatever it may be. We can't drop everything to say, hey, Mrs. Smith, we submitted your estimate, in a demand package 3 weeks ago. We can't drop everything for that. But what we can do is build smart systems to still provide communication that's not only adequate, but hopefully exceeds their expectations. And then they're very happy with us. And then they're saying how great the contractor was, and we're all getting referrals, and we're able to help as many people as possible.
Yeah, I love that advice because I think it relates to how contractors do business so well. I think that so many of these guys, get in a situation where maybe one or two people at the entire company really know what's going on, right? Yep. And so you don't have that situation where as a customer, I can just call the office and someone's like, oh yeah, let me look up your, your job and see what's going on with it. So I think, employing some technology where you can have that organization and have everyone be privy to what's going on with any given customer situation is a huge piece of it, and not having to worry about like, hey, I've got that one rep that sold me this thing and I can't get in touch with him now because he's busy or he's on vacation. Like I should be able to call anybody in that company and find out what the status of things is. And I think that's great advice. It plays well to the contractor side of things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I've seen, it's sales is sexy, right? Hey, we want to get more sales guys in. We want to do this. We want to do that. And what I see a lot of times, kind of an early growing misstep, I don't want to call it a mistake, but a misstep is sometimes, you outkick your coverage on what you can provide. And I don't mean just in terms of actually building roofs, but I mean in terms of servicing those clients in a way that they're not going to be super disappointed, angry, leaving bad reviews and all of that stuff. Also, too, the easiest way to grow in the restoration space is to hire a bunch of sales guys and just let them go, and they're each their own unit. The problem is you're going to have a lot of trouble servicing those clients the right way, in a way that you, as the business owner, as the contractor, license holder, whatever it may be, that you would be, hopefully proud of, but at least satisfaction level is, meeting expectations. And that's where maybe some of the tools like with Roofr come in, and some of the other great technology products we have now, is you can scale up some other parts of your business using simple, easy technology, and also too a variable cost, right? We have 100 roofs in, we pay for 100 reports. We don't have to have a huge staff because next month we may only have 40.
Right. Yeah. And I think, to that point, there's a guy in this industry who's a consultant. I had him on another podcast. And one of the things that he said to me a long time ago when I worked on the CRM side is that these guys should really streamline and focus on organizing your production first and work backwards. And I think so many times we do it the other way around, just like you said. We throw a ton of salespeople at it. Hey, we're going to make tons of money. We got tons of guys out there running appointments. And then you end up with a situation where all these guys have run these appointments, and now you got this log jam where you can't service these people. And it could be as simple as not being able to communicate with them effectively.
Yeah, 100%. That's good advice. And it's kind of like we talked about. If someone's a retail contractor wanting to get into restoration, maybe talk to these consultants or whoever it is, build out those processes, learn the process, learn what's required at each step, and then start to scale it. Don't just run in and get big eyes with, oh, I can make so much money. You can, but do it the right way. Build the process first, build a solid legal repeatable process, and then you can begin to scale that, and you're going to be happier. You're not going to get phone calls at home that this happened, that happened. I mean, it's I've seen it so many times, and I really do. I have great relationships with a ton of roofing contractors. I found this niche kind of on a whim. I was doing catastrophic injury claims. I've been in federal court trials, all that stuff. And I kind of found this cool niche, and I really bonded with a couple guys early on. I was like, this is so cool. I can help a homeowner get literally a new roof over their head. I can help a contractor provide for his family and then grow and help other people. And it's a win-win-win. It really is when it's done correctly. Without the corner cutting, without the greed and people saying, "Oh, that's a law," but they're not enforcing it. That's not how I do business. That's not how I would advise anyone to do business. But if you do this the right way, it is a tremendous way to provide for yourself, your family, to do good in the world, and to have a lot of fun along the way. You work with people you like, you trust, you communicate well with. It should be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I really appreciate your time today, Dan. I think
Absolutely.
a lot of really great insight here. I think this is always a topic that, can be controversial, and everybody has very strong opinions about the insurance side of the business. I mean, I remember 3, 4 years ago when I got into this, people said, all insurance roofing is a fad. It's just going to fade out, and there won't even be insurance roofing down the road. And now you look at how big that industry has become, and how prevalent it is as a piece of the roofing industry itself, how it's really become its own industry in itself, separate of all the other ones even. So
Yeah.
I think that some really really great insight today from you on just what to do as someone who's thinking about getting into it or who's already in it, and making sure you're protecting yourself, making sure that you're doing things the ethical way, the right way, and that you're covering yourself. You're not backing yourself into a corner or creating an issue for yourself down the line.
Yeah, if you want to build a great business, you can't build it on a weak foundation or an illegal or criminal foundation. It might work for a little while, it might work for a long while, but ultimately, we're dealing with very sophisticated, multi-billion-dollar companies on the receiving end of fraudulent estimates. Right? I need 2 porta potties for an up and over roof. They're going to find this stuff out, and if they see a pattern, they know who you are. Right? They have hundreds of millions of billions at stake here, to take on that extraordinary risk. It doesn't make sense to me. It might take a little longer to do things the right way, but there's a reason they call it the right way. And Pete, I see we're wrapping up here, so I certainly appreciate the chance to have a nice chat with you. I'm super pumped about helping roofing contractors from single guys getting into the business, young guys trying to get in sales, all the way up. I have 100 million plus a year companies that I advise. So I'm very happy to make time for anyone who wants to have a follow-up conversation. Certainly here in Florida or New York, I can provide good direct advice. I've helped companies build processes to scale up to $100 million marks. A lot of the, kind of names that you'll see, household names in our industry. I was fortunate to be involved in their early growth stages and helping them set up processes. So I'm very happy to share time with any of Roofr clients or anyone out there who just wants to learn to do things the right way and are committed to do that. I'm happy to bring it for you.
Yeah, that's fantastic because I think, at some point, even if you consider yourself a great businessman, I think at some point it really helps to have someone like yourself who's been through it, who's got that experience to just give some insight and give some direction, to kind of help things along. Like we always say, at Roofr, the staff at Roofr, you got to remember we're talking to tens of roofer, a day, hundreds of roofers a week, thousands of roofers a year. Like take advantage of us. And you're in the same situation, like you're dealing with this situation thousands of times a year. Your insight is invaluable. Where as a contractor, I'm only seeing my piece of it, my side of it. You're seeing it from every angle, and that gives you a very unique perspective to be able to guide these guys and give, some really great direction.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Pete. And I'm always happy to do that. That's part of what drew me to the industry. And also, I have a long-standing relationship with Richie, Nick, Kevin, the whole gang over at Roofr. And it was kind of, that was the mindset, is let's help as much as we can, and we'll have some fun and make some money along the way.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time, and appreciate
Absolutely.
you jumping on. Lots of great stuff here. And, be sure to join us every other Tuesday. We release a new podcast here at the Roofer Report. So hopefully we'll catch you guys next time. Thank you, Dan.
Great. Thanks again, Pete.